Good morning, colleagues. Today's theme is segmental structure of the lungs. On this picture, you can see lungs from medial and posterior view. We can understand that lungs are quite large organs, paired organs. And this is right lung, and this is left lung. Again, we are looking from posterior. That's why this is left and this is right. And it's good seeing that there are two fissures on the right lung. This is oblique fissure, and this is horizontal fissure, and only one fissure on the left lung. Here it is, fissure, oblique fissure, fissura obliqua in Latin, fissura horizontalis in Latin. These fissures, they divide lungs into large units which called lobes. So left lung has two lobes, superior lobe and inferior lobe, and right lung has three lobes, superior lobe, medial lobe, and inferior lobe. And inside of each lobe there are another units, smaller units than lobe, but they also can fulfill the function of whole lung. For example, here we can see the basis of most small units. They called lobules. There is a gray border of each lobules because they are divided from each other by connective tissue, and those individuals who live in towns through its life sure have enough small particles which enters to the respiratory tract when we inhale the air. And in towns the air always is polluted by some dust or carbon particles and so on. And there are a lot of smokers who helps to enter a lot of carbon and nicotine particles to enter inside of the lungs. That's why this connective tissue border becomes gray due to storage of the particles around the lobes. So these gray borders practically are the dust, the particles of carbons, and so on. We can see in this picture the borders of lobules, but nevertheless there are medium size units which are larger than lobules and smaller than lobes. They called segments. So each of two lungs consists of several segments. But nevertheless, we can't see here any border of segments. Why? First of all, because they are chirurgical units. So they have no between several adjacent segments any connective tissue border. So it's difficult to distinguish it if we are not operate this person. So really the borders of the segment could be seen during the surgical operation when we press the arteria which nourish this segment, and due to ischemia, it will be change the color of the segment. So segment is surgical unit, which is necessary for surgical operation, for removing in case of tumor or any, for example, damage of the lung, not the whole lobe or not the whole lung, that is very bad for person. It will be not enough oxygen for respiration, but remove only one segment. So we should know the name of each segment and understand that inside of each segment enters the bronchus segmentalis, which is bronch of third order. So let us look at this picture and try recognize. This is trachea. This is principal bronchus, bronchus principalis. Dexter and sinister. It's interesting that bronchus principalis dexter is shorter, but bronchus principalis sinister is longer. Bronchus principalis dexter is larger in diameter and bronchus principalis sinister smaller in diameter. And third feature is that bronchus principalis dexter oriented vertically as prolongation of trachea, of direction of trachea, and bronchus principalis sinister directed almost horizontally. So, if I ask you, for example, a child been playing with any small toys, swallowed this toy, it enters not into the esophagus, but in trachea, where it could be found during bronchoscopy, in right bronchus or in left bronchus. I think you can answer that in right, because this is directly prolongation of trachea, and enter to the left bronchus is more difficult because it is oriented with angle to the right. So now each principal bronchus divides then on bronchus of second order. This is bronchus lobaris, to enter the lobe. So this person is oriented to us by his face. So this is right lobar, right superior lobar bronchus. This is right inferior lobar bronchus. And this small is right medium lobar bronchus. And from the left side, we also can demonstrate this is left superior lobar bronchus, and this is left inferior lobar bronchus. And each of these lobar bronchi divides into segmental bronchi, which are bronchi of third order. And now we shall call each of them by the name and by the number. Let's begin from the right lung superior lobe. So, lobus superior in Latin, number 1. This is number 1. Segmentum apicale. This is segmentum apicale. And then number 2, segmentum posterius. And number 3 is segmentum anterius. Here it is. It's interesting that segmentum apicale called this way because this segment is located really on the apex pulmonis, and this part of lung is in our body on the neck. So if the individual has, for example, wounds of the neck, it's very often injured the apical segment, segmentum apicale, or first segment. It's very widespread problem of wounds of the neck. Then lobus medius in right lung. It will be surround these bronchi. So inside of lobus medius we can find two segments. Segment number 4, segmentum laterale, and segment number 5, segmentum mediale. Here it is. Segmentum laterale and segmentum mediale. And lobus inferior, here it is, lobus inferior. All this is bronchus inferior lobaris, and this is lobus inferior. And inside of it we can find number 6, segmentum superius. Segmentum superius. Then, number 7, segmentum basale mediale. Here it is. Then, number 8, segmentum basale anterior. Then, number 9, here it is, segmentum basale laterale. And at least number 10, segmentum basale posterior. Where is it? It is oriented in opposite side from us. That's why number 10 we can't demonstrate from this side. It's obvious because it is located posteriorly to these structures. So we know that in right lung there are 10 segments. 3 in superior lobe, 2 in medius lobe, and 5 in inferior lobe. It's very important that segments from 7 to 10 called segmentum basale mediale, basale anterior, basale laterale, basale posterior. What does that mean? Practically, it means that lungs practically are staying on the basal segments. These basal segments are arranged on the dome of the diaphragm. That's why these 4 basal segments contacts with the diaphragm, with the domes of the diaphragm. And now segments of the left lung. We know that there are only 2 lobes, and lobus superior is the first, and it's interesting that 2 segments, 2 subsegmental bronchus are combined into 1 segment. So we can say that there is united segment which called segmentum apico-posterior, but nevertheless it's drawn here that there is number 1, there is number 2, but we are write down that 1 plus 2 is segmentum apico-posterior. So first segment is segmentum apico-posterior, which is the result of fusion of 2 segments. Then segmentum anterior, or third segment, practically the same like in right side. Here it is segmentum anterior, here it is segmentum anterior. Then segmentum lingulare superior. Lingulare in Latin means that it has shape of tongue, small tongue. Segmentum lingulare superior corresponds segmentum laterale of right lung. And number 5, segmentum lingulare inferior corresponds to segmentum mediale of right lung. And it's good for us that in lobus inferior all the segments are the same like in right lung. I ought to say that in different countries, in different textbooks, different atlases, you can find different classification of the segments. In Russian Federation, usually we say that right lung and left lung, they have different number of segments, and left lung has 9 segments, and right lung has 10 segments. It's written here number 10, but nevertheless we understand that first segment is a result of fusion, number 1 and number 2. That's why from left side there are 9 segments, and from right side there are 10 segments. Another important question. We should remember the name and the belonging to the lobe. So, segmentum lingulare superior is part of the lobus superior pulmonis sinister. Segmentum mediale, number 5, belongs to the lobus medius of right lung, pulmonis dexter, and so on. This is very important information, and you shall find it in your tests. Now let's look at the picture of segmental bronchi in another demonstration. All the bronchi are designated here with a number, so this picture we can also find in our tests. Very important detail, be attentive, this is anterior view and this is posterior view of trachea. From anterior we can find cartilage, and from posterior we can find parius membranatius of trachea. This is parius membranatius of trachea. And now the same picture, but with demonstration of each segment. So, number 1, segmentum apicale of the right lobe is here. I have said that this part, apex pulmonis, is located on the neck, above the clavicle. And from left side we can find here segmentum apico-posterior united. This is segmentum apico-posterior, result of union, fusion of number 1 and number 2. Number 3 in right lung is segmentum posterior, and here segmentum anterior from left side. Then, very important to distinguish the segments number 4 and number 5. In left lung, they arranged superior and inferior to each other, and in right lung, laterally and medially to each other. That's why in right lung, number 4 is segmentum laterale, and number 5 is segmentum mediale. And in left lung, number 4 is segmentum lingulare superior, and number 5 lingulare inferior. They correspond to each other. And inferior lobes in both lungs practically are the same according to the segments. Number 6, here it is. It's apex of the inferior lobe. And from 7 to 10th segments, they are staying, being contacted with the diaphragm. So they are bases of the whole lung. That's why they called segmentum basale laterale, basale posterior, basale mediale, basale anterior. And again, this picture is from Netter anatomy textbook. Netter Anatomy Atlas of Human Anatomy. And you can see here, using comma, it's written 7th and 8th. So this is some differences between classification which is used in Russia and in America, for example. And now, very useful picture concerning holotopy and skeletotopy. You remember that holotopy is projection to the surface of the body. Most important information for clinicians, because when physician try to auscultate the lung, for him it's very useful to know in which segment he has found several acoustic phenomena. And that's why we use this photo from, especially prepared by means of body painting. You know this picture. So, number 1, segmentum apicale of right lung is above of clavicle. So, we said that segmentum apicale is located on the neck. It's very important for understanding. This is number 1 of yellow color. Then we can't see segmentum posterior here because we are looking from above, from front, and that's why only segmentum anterior, number 3. So practically he is located from second to fourth ribs. All this zone belongs to segmentum anterior. Then from right side we can see segmentum laterale and segmentum mediale. Down to the fourth rib. You remember that horizontal fissure is projected on the fourth rib. So the border between superior lobe and medius lobe pass on the fourth rib. And the basal segments from anterior view we can see only concerning number 8. Here it is. Another are on backside. Here it is backside. So segmentum posterius number 2 in right and apica posterior in left. We can see here. Then number 6 segmentum apicale, which belongs to the inferior lobes both from right and left sides, and segmentum basale. Basale posterior number 10. And we need to find lateral view. Here it is. So segmentum basale laterale number 9. And where is segmentum basale mediale? Sure, it's impossible to project it into anterior chest wall because it contacts with so-named mediastinum, organs which are located between two lungs. And to another pictures which is for understanding skeletotopy, and most important for keep it in memory is information that border between superior lobe and medius lobe in the right lung is fourth rib. So fourth and fifth segments are located below to the fourth rib. And the border between inferior lobe and medial lobe in right lung pass from third spinous process of vertebra to the fourth rib on the linea axillaris media, and then to the fixed rib on linea media clavicularis. If we connect these 3 points, we can find the border between inferior lobe and medial lobe, and this understand us where we can find 8th, 9th and 10th segments. Okay, this is clinically very important information, and I ask you to be very attentive to it. So, 1 minute pause for prolong with next lecture.